Welcome back class 11th. In this part, we will discuss further what are the other characteristic features of a nation, what makes nation. So in earlier part, we have discussed shared beliefs, we have discussed history, and we have discussed territory. Now in this part, first we will come to the topic shared political ideas. That means if people from a similar region, or people from a region which they belong, and they want to make a nation, they want an idea of nation corresponding with the other citizens who reside in another part of the country. So they will need to have some common political beliefs, which is, for example, democracy. If people from northern part of India, people from northeastern part of India, southern part of India, and western part of India, if we ask each and every one of them, they will say yes, India is a democratic country and we want India as a democracy only. So we all share this common idea of India being a democratic country. Even though we live in different parts of the India, we speak different languages, we follow different religion, we may have different skin color, different set of beliefs, cultural beliefs, etc. Yet we all believe in a particular idea of democracy which will bind us together. So it will represent our political identity as a nation. So in a democracy, it is the shared commitment to the set of political values and ideals that is most desirable basis of a political community or a nation state. So if we discuss about democracy, we see that this is the shared commitment which will bind us together as citizens from all parts of India, because we will have a similar belief of making our country democratic. Another example is that we all have similar rights. In Constitution of India, the fundamental rights are given to each and every citizen of India, irrespective of his social status, caste, gender, etc. But each and every citizen shares a common belief that India should be a democratic country. We all have rights for our promotion, our welfare, as well as for the welfare of others. So if I have a right to be not get hurt by someone else also has a right that they will not be hurt by me. That means we are mutually sharing these ideas. We have a mutual understanding of respecting each other's rights. So these kind of political ideas also make up a nation. Because it is our duty for our fellow members, we have some certain obligations for our fellow members of society, fellow citizens of India, that we need to share with each other, and this will bind us together as nation. Now second will be common political identity. That means some people say that people need to have some common identity. Common identity will be on the basis of religion, language, culture, etc. But as you know, countries in the present time, and moreover India has multi-religious, multi-linguistic society. In India, you see different kinds of languages in different regions of India. In northern part of India, you see multiple languages being spoken by citizens of India, and same is the case with southern part of India, same is the case with northern part of India. You see different kind of religion, different types of religions: Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, Sikhism, Christianity, and various other tribal religions as well. So India is mix of all these multilinguistic, multi-religious societies. We cannot impose one common cultural identity, one common language identity on everyone, because in doing so we will be contradicting with the ideas of democracy which made our nation a democratic nation. In democracy, everyone is equal, irrespective of their religion, irrespective of their status. Each and everybody has equal rights to express themselves, to follow some religious beliefs they believe in, to speak the language they are comfortable speaking with. So all these things are an important crux, important part of democracy. And if we are to impose one common identity as a language, as a cultural imposition on others, then it will form a ruckus in society, a chaotic situation in society, because we will be imposing only one view over others, and this will be suppressing different views which exist in a society like India. And in doing so, we will be imposing one's cultural superiority over others. because no culture is superior from the others when we say from the perspective of a nation. All religions, all languages, everything is equal. It is up to people, which language they want to speak, which religion they want to follow, in which region they want to reside. So no region is above other. Instead, each and every region, each and every religion, every language, they all are equal. They have some set of unique characteristics which make them unique with respect to the others. And all these things come together as a bowl of salad. For example, I'm giving you this example of bowl of salad, that you have seen a bowl of salad. In that you have a tomatoes, you have cucumbers, you have spinach and other variety of vegetables. So when you eat a salad, you taste different vegetables when you eat it, है ना? Also, bowl is filled with different kinds of vegetables. It represents different colors, different textures. They are not mixed together like a soup. They are not a bowl of soup. They are a bowl of salad. In a similar way, in a similar fashion, India is a bowl of salad. We have different cultures, different religions representing different ideas in a colorful way, which makes our bowl of salad, that is India, beautiful and multi-religious and multilinguistic. So if we were to impose only one religion, one language over others, it will be harmful for a democracy. That is why we never give preference to cultural identity in a nation. We give preference to sorry, we give preference to political identity in a nation, because cultural identity cannot be similar for each and every one. If you take an example of your society only, where you live, you see there are different multiple houses in your society, or different in flats. If you are living, you see there are different families. Each family has certain set of traditions. We, even though we follow similar religion, even though we live in a similar society, we still have some different cultural aspects. So same is the case with the Indian nation, or nation in any other part of the world, that different religion and different linguistic cultural values, they all come together and cannot be fused together to make one common culture, one common cultural identity. That is why sharing a common political identity is more important. That is, common political identity is more important than a common cultural identity, because you cannot have one cultural identity. People cannot assume that their culture is superior than the others. In what way can you compare apples and oranges? This is like comparing an apple with oranges. So it is completely different. You cannot compare two different cultures, that which culture is more superior. Rather, we need to have a common political identity and common political set of beliefs. That is why it is given. For both these reasons, it is desirable to imagine the nation in political rather than cultural terms. That is, democracies need to emphasize and expect loyalty to a set of values that may be enshrined in the constitution of the country, rather than adherence to a particular religion, race, or language. This means that in a democracy, people, when it comes to nation, when it comes to your country, about your country, when it comes to fellow citizens, you should not be thinking in terms of religion, you should not be thinking in terms of languages, you should be thinking in terms of constitutional values mentioned in Indian constitution. That these are the constitutional values given to us by our constitution makers, so that we can further our country as a best democratic country in the world. We should not be thinking on the lines of religious, cultural and other aspects. There should be no religious distinction, there should be no cultural distinction, there should be no language distinction. The only thing which we should adhere to, which we should relate to when comparing ourselves with the fellow citizens, is that on the basis of constitutional values. That means constitutional values are of utmost importance when we say that as citizens of India we aspire to be democratic, because when you adhere to constitutional values, then only you can make country democratic, rather than sticking to religious, linguistic, regional and other aspects. That will be dividing, moment. That when what happened in the earlier part of the 19th and 20th centuries, when British were ruling India, what they did, they separated, they divided people on the basis of communal lines, on the basis of religion, on the basis of languages, etc. And you can see what were the consequences of those factors. So when it comes to country, we need to adhere to the constitutional values and not to a particular race, language, or religion. Now, coming to the question that why do people imagine themselves as a nation? That why people want a nation, why they can't agree that okay, this is some country or some kingdom, why they want nation, why do people imagine themselves as a nation? For this, we need to understand national self-determination. So here you can see that nations, unlike other social groups, seek the right to govern themselves and determine their future development. They seek, in the other words, the right to self-determination. This is the point. Self-determination. This means that nation is different from the other social groups as we have studied earlier, families, clans, tribes, because we don't see other citizens face to face on a daily basis, like we see our family, like we see our fellow society members, like tribe members and clan members. But when we talk about nation, it is all for self determination. That means right to govern themselves and determine their future development. When people come together, they want themselves to govern that region where they have been living from the past, ancient times and time immemorial, sharing with other people and developing a common sense of identity. So people want to make nation so that they can preserve their own culture. What does this mean? This means that people come together to form a nation because they believe that if we do not have a nation, if we do not have a common political identity, our culture will be lost in some superior culture who will be colonizing us, who will be ruling us. So to protect their cultural identity, people desire to form a state in which the culture of the group is protected, if not privileged, so that they can protect their culture from the outsiders who seek to influence their culture through various means, by imposing rules, by ruling them, by overtaking the particular nation or kingdom. So if they come together as a nation, they can preserve their culture, they can preserve their identity of that region, because they have been living there from the past, many hundreds and thousands of years, and their families have been living there. So they want to protect that identity which they feel closer to. And as you can see, in the 19th century, in the 20th, in the later 19th century, in the earlier 20th century, you will see that the notion of one culture, one state began to gain acceptability. Why? Because people tend to think in Europe that all those who are living together as a nation need to have one cultural identity. जो अभी हम लोगों ने डिस्कस किया था, the past in last topic we have discussed now, that cultural identity cannot be given preference, rather political identity is to be given preference. So in Europe, you see the notion of one culture, one state began to gain acceptability. Why? Because people at that point of time in Europe thought of the process that we should have one culture and one nation. That if we all belong to one culture, we should have one nation. Another person who belongs to different culture should have different nation, with sharing with people who have the same form of culture or same set of values in which they share. Subsequently, the idea of one culture, one state was employed while reordering state boundaries after World War I. What happened after World War I? After World War I, the states in Europe wanted to segregate different countries, want to differentiate different countries on the basis of culture they identify with. That means if people from Germany identify with German culture, so all those people who believe in German culture will form part of the Germany. All those who believe in the Russian culture will form part of the Russian nation, and things like these. But as you can see that it proved virtually impossible to satisfy all demands for self-determination which were made at the time. Why? Because in demands of self-determination, you need to have some other basic qualities as well. if you are defining culture as the basic identity, what about people living in minority within those regions? That means if this region is Germany and people from all over the Germany decided that everybody who belongs to German culture should be German and we need to make Germany a nation. But what about people living in minority in these areas? Are they not part of a Germany? Even though their culture is different, they have been part of Germany from ancient times. So what about these kind of people? So you need to see that self-determination proved virtually impossible to be satisfied because people kept demanding more and more, which led to the conflict between two or different set of groups within the same nation. As you can see in partition of India, that reorganization of state boundaries to satisfy the demands of one culture, one state led to mass migration of population across state boundaries. That means when Pakistan was made on the idea, was formed on the idea that Muslims will have a different region, different nation than Hindus of India. So Pakistan was made on these lines, and you saw what were the consequences of these clashes. When Pakistan was reorganized and state boundaries were partitioned, that some part of the Punjab will be in India, some part of Gujarat and Rajasthan will be in India, and other part of these states will be in Pakistan. On similar lines, you saw how people were affected. It led to the mass migration of people across state boundaries, and they became victims of communal violence because one culture tend to impose their culture on the minority groups. In Pakistan, you saw that majority people tend to impose their culture over minorities. So it led to the conflict, it led to communal violence, and this resulted in the displacement of millions of people just because cultural identity was given more importance than the political identity. As you can see that even though Pakistan was formed on the lines of cultural identity, I'm giving an example of this Pakistan, that even though Pakistan was formed on the lines of communal lines, it was formed on the communal lines that it will be a nation only for Muslims, still you cannot say that each and every person residing in Pakistan will be Muslim, because you still have Hindus, you still have Muslims, you still have Sikh. So you cannot, even though you are agreeing to the demand of formation of nation on the basis of cultural identity, still you cannot still you cannot contain only one ethnic community within those boundaries, because people from different religion, different culture will also stay there if they want to, because they have been living there from the time immemorial. So why are they going to leave that particular place which they call home? So in a similar way, you can see that this was not at all effective in creating states on the basis of cultural identity, because you cannot contain only one ethnic community. है ना? In Pakistan you see still there are multiple group of people who follow different culture and different religion, even though Pakistan was found on the lines that it will be a Muslim nation. So how can you make sure that only one community lives? You cannot. Example for demand of for national self-determination in Basque, you will completely understand that what national self-determination means and what is the basis of national self-determination. So Basque is a region in Spain, and their demand is that they want an autonomous region separate from the Spanish government, because they think they are culturally and ethnically different from the Spaniards and people belonging to Spain. So this demand for national self-determination in Basque is also a kind of way that people say we belong to different culture, we want a separate nation, but it cannot happen, because if you tend to give some concessions to these ideas, people from smaller pockets of the region will crop up like mushrooms, and they will tend to ask for new nations, states, new self-determination ideas. That means they want, yes, we also belong to different culture, now we want a different part of nation within this region, we want different part on this region, and so on. So it will create multiple fragmented nation states within a larger nation state. So it will be an impossible and humongous tedious task to contain all these ideas. So what we need to do is we need to identify ourselves not with the cultural identity but with the political identity as a nation. Now, so as you can see that most of the states in present time and India as well, we have more than one ethnic and cultural community living within our boundary and also with different nations. So it is possible that more than it is not only possible, it is of sure occurrence that one more than one ethnic community and cultural community lives inside boundaries of a nation. But you cannot continue making a different nation states just as they demand that we want national self-determination on the basis of cultural lines, because as I told you, this will create fragmented parts of different smaller nation states within a larger nation. So what we do is we try to accommodate their problem, we try to accommodate them in majority in mainland, and we give them same set of political ideas, we give them same set of political belief system, same set of political protection as other people are getting, so that they are also included in the mainland and do not demand the separate nation states that they are demanding, which will only deteriorate the situation and further exacerbate the option of violence. So what nation states do, let me give you an example, that to accommodate these ideas, we give them some autonomy in managing their own affairs and managing their taxes. For example, in India, you see in northeastern parts of India, we have some tribal councils. So tribals are in majority there, so we gave them some autonomy so that they are also they are still a part of India and also manage their own affairs on the basis of their culture. So we are not interfering with them on the cultural lines, only we are trying to accumulate not accumulate, we are trying to accommodate accommodate them on the basis of political identities and political set of beliefs, that they belong to a greater nation which is India, yet they have autonomy to conduct their own affairs, manage their own political affairs, their cultural affairs and etc., still remaining in contact remaining inside Indian territory, because we need to accommodate these minorities problems and affairs, because they also have an important role to play in this multi-diverse cultural India, because their culture is also important, our culture is also important. So rather than clash of cultures, we need to develop a political thinking which will accept each and everyone's ideas, which will make way for each and every one, rather than making only way for superior culture to minority culture. And as we already know that in the earlier 20th century, the right to national self-determination also been asserted by the national liberation movements in Asia and Africa when they were struggling against colonial domination. So these national self-determination ideas are not new, because as you already know, Swaraj, the idea of Swaraj, self-rule, which we say Swaraj, that is self-rule. This is idea of national self-determination which was presented by Indians in front of the British, so that they will give us power to rule ourselves. We did not want to be ruled by the British. We wanted our people to rule us. We wanted our representatives to represent in the assembly. So these kind of ideas are not new, but were part of national liberation movement in Asia and Africa as well. So these nationalist movements did so because they maintained that political independence would provide dignity and recognition to the colonized people and also help to protect the collective interest of their people. So what these movements basic idea was, the background work was that if we have people, our own people in the ruling government, they will recognize our problems, they will connect with us on the lines that they also feel similar things. For example, if I belong to northern part of India, if I belong to some region, I will know the problem of that region more than the region of any other place where I have not been working or not been living. Because in this region where I have been living for the past 20 years, 10 years, I know what the problems citizens are facing, what kind of problems citizens are facing. So in a similar way, nationalist movements at the point of independence, they wanted their own people, their own representatives in the government, because they thought that political independence would provide them dignity and recognition to the colonized people. What were the problems of the tribals? Only people from tribal communities can explain them much better than person who is not a tribal. If I ask what are the problems of a social so what is the problems of the socially low group, yeah, economically low group, only people belonging to these groups can identify and tell us the problems which they are facing in actual reality, है ना. So in a similar way, all these things happened because people thought at that point of time that political independence would provide them dignity and recognition, because somebody who is at the position of changing their fate knows about problems which they are facing, because that person has just come from that place only. Moreover, you see the national liberation movements were also inspired by the goal of bringing justice and rights and prosperity to the nation. That means people were feeling that they are being treated differently from the other Europeans and whites in. And people thought they were being differently treated by colonial Indian powers, you know. So they also thought कि if we have someone who is representing us, if we have our own rule, people belonging to this country will rule, then we will have a sense of dignity. So in a similar way, national self-determination helped in the national liberation of the countries. But as you see, we now have a paradoxical situation of nation states which themselves had achieved independence through struggle, now acting against minorities within their own territories who claim the right to national self-determination. So the nations who earlier got separated from the colonial powers, now they are facing a similar situation from the minorities inside their nation, that these minorities are demanding right to national self-determination, right to separate nation from the existing nation which earlier got independence from the from the colonial powers like British and French. So now you can see that people are demanding, the minorities are demanding, or the ethnically different communities are demanding separate nation states. So the problem lies in how to accommodate these demands as well. The solution is not creating more states. That is, you should not create more states. If people from this particular, if this is a nation, people from these community, these region are demanding a separate nation, you just cannot cut it off and claim, okay, this region is enough, we will give them separate identity, because at some point of time in future you will see again this will emerge, then this will emerge, and this will emerge, and so on. You will lose the identity as a nation. But what is the solution then? Solution is to accommodate their demands, to accommodate themselves in the mainstream political institutions, to make our country, to make our nation more democratic, more equal in sense of different minorities, majorities, communities. We need to ensure that people with different cultural and ethnic identities live and coexist as partners and equal citizens within the country. And how is this going to happen? This is going to happen when we give each and everyone equal right, equal protection of the laws which we have given in Indian Constitution. So as you can see, our constitution makers were faced with a similar problem. They were faced with similar situations, but what they decided was they did not accede to the demand of separate nation or separate statehoods. They accommodated those demands within the mainstream political ideas and presented them in a beautiful way, so that our nation, which is a great nation of India, remained intact and it is not further divided by some parochial interests which were earlier divided into India and Pakistan. So what we need to do is we need to make our country, we need to make our nations in the present day more democratic and more accommodating to the needs of different ethnic cultural communities. This is the only way to resolve problems. And if we accept these demands, and if we respect the rights of the minorities, and if we accept the respect the rights of the minorities and the cultural groups, we will also gain in a way their respect. What we can do to make our country more democratic and more inclusive is by accommodating different ideas from the different cultural communities, different linguistic communities, different religious communities, so that each and everybody is being represented on the same lines as the majority community, as the majority language speaking community, majority cultural community, so that each and everyone in a democracy is being treated equally. This is the crux of democracy, that everybody is equal. So when we treat everybody as equals, then we can find a solution to suppress these separatist demands which every now and then crop up to disintegrate nation. So thank you class for this. Now in next part we will discuss national pluralism and the other topics, and this will be completed in part 3. Thank you. Have a nice day. If you have any demands, if you have any suggestions, please do comment so that I can improve my videos and my explanation as well. Thank you for bearing with me. Thank you. Have a nice day.